Welcome back. We're talking about the slow but steady departure of Christians from the Middle East with Professor Bernard Sabella, a former professor of sociology at Bethlehem University and a member of the Palestinian Parliament. He joins us from Dayton, Ohio. And Charles Sennott, executive editor of GlobalPost.com, who spent years in the Middle East as a journalist. He is the author of The Body and the Blood, The Middle East's Vanishing Christians and the Possibility for Peace. Charles is in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome back to both of you. Professor Sabella, just before we broke, you wanted to say something about some of the reasons that Christians are leaving the Middle East.
Well, when you talk about intolerance, it really has to do with locking ourselves, whether Jews, Muslims, or Christians, into narrow religious worldviews and failing really to appreciate or to understand the other. And this projection of religion into practically everything in the Middle East can be disastrous into prospects of making a difference and for creating a vision where you have justice and of Israeli occupation, where peace cannot be conducive to reconciliation unless we respect the other as the other and not as a different human being that has no bearing in our worldview. So I think yes, intolerance is a problem, but it is not a problem of one religion. I think it's a problem of the three monotheistic religions. And the Pope's visit, perhaps, can challenge all of us on that we need to be more tolerant, that we need not to accept injustice irrespective of where it comes from, and that we need to live as dignified human beings.
Well, as far as the Pope's visit is concerned, I want to put this to Charles Sennott. This is an email we received just a short while ago. This is from Mohammed Abdul Rahman, and he writes, "I still can't forget Pope Benedict's scandalous remarks about Islam, quoting from medieval texts and pretending to be innocent. By contrast, he jumps to offer an apology to the Jews on matters like the Holocaust."
You know, I think it's a very interesting comment. At GlobalPost.com, I have a column today that would take that point on. I covered the papal visit of John Paul II when he came in 2000, and I've been following this papal visit, and the contrast is extraordinary. You know, John Paul II had a grace. He had a confident stride as he set forth on his pilgrimage into the Holy Land, and he spoke very elegantly to both Judaism and to Islam, as well as to the indigenous Christian community. I just do not think that Pope Benedict has that same grace. I don't think he has the same confidence. I don't think he has the same moral authority. It's hard to say which of the three Abrahamic faiths this Pope has insulted more. I mean, Jews have been very upset with his restoration of the bishop who has been a Holocaust diminisher, if not denier. And I think that so many Muslims have been upset with his comments from several years ago in Germany. This Pope has the ability to stumble and to trip, and that can be very dangerous in an unforgiving terrain in the Middle East. And on this pilgrimage, I don't know. I'd love to hear what Bernard Sabella says. I wish I had more faith that this Pope was going to be helpful in pushing forward those who want to see the peace process get started again. I'm not sure that I have the confidence that he'll actually succeed in doing that.
Yeah, but Charles, I have to remind you that the Pope is coming at a time when the Palestinians in particular are feeling pain and feeling the effects and impacts of the war on Gaza. That was a cruel war. And therefore, and also the Christian community in the Holy Land has certain points which they find quite difficult to reconcile with in terms of Israeli actions. So the Pope comes at a time when it is quite difficult for him, and that's why some of us have advised him to postpone. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, what I appeal to my Muslim compatriots and Muslims who are always pinning down or not being able to forget the quotation that the Pope has said again and again that this was simply a quotation and that he wanted things to move forward. And I'm very happy to report that the Catholic-Muslim dialogue and exchange is going on yearly, and that there is more openness and understanding. And I have to remind the viewers, and also this person who wrote, that the Vatican has always been a champion of the rights of Palestinians, starting with the respect and identification the Vatican paid to Palestinian refugees, including the 60,000 Palestinian Christians who were refugees out of the 1948 war, and that Pope John Paul II was the pontiff who received the late Yasser Arafat in 1982, when even European countries were not receiving the PLO, and that in the basic agreement between the Vatican and the PLO of 2000, there was a clear indication that no unilateral actions in Jerusalem are accepted either morally or legally. So I have to remind especially my Muslim friends and compatriots that, that the Vatican has always taken a dignified position on the Palestinian question.
May I jump in?
Go ahead, Charles.
Dr. Sabella, I agree with you that the Vatican has frequently, in many important periods in history, taken a dignified position, particularly in calling out for a fair and balanced sense of justice in the Holy Land, justice for Palestinians and justice for Israelis. And there's been a moral authority that I think the Vatican has brought. But I, as someone of Catholic tradition myself, I want to have faith that Pope Benedict will speak with enough authority in the land for his voice to be resonant on that issue. But I think he's done significant enough damage to the Vatican's relationships with the Muslim society and with Jews around the world that I'm not sure that voice is going to ring as true as it did in the many years of hard work that John Paul II put toward these interfaith efforts. And just one last point would be that it hurts the, just to finish, would be to say it hurts the Christian community particularly, I think, when the Vatican has missteps as it has had. I think this Pope has too much adherence to tradition. You know, I love this metaphor that Pope Benedict has restored the tradition of wearing the papal red shoes. This is an ancient tradition for popes to wear red shoes. John Paul II didn't care about that tradition. He wore very smart walking shoes on his pilgrimage in the Holy Land. This Pope, his obsession with tradition, is never going to make a footprint in the Middle East in red shoes. And I just think, I don't mean to be flip, but I do think there's something there that he's just put his foot in the wrong direction, I'm afraid.
But Charles, yes, but Charles, you remember that each person has his unique character and his unique preferences. So we cannot project an image that we'd like to see in Pope Benedict. But on the other hand, I think the insistence of everybody to say that there are problems really goes back to this, allow me to say, this notion of being victims. We are always victims. If the Pope says something, we are victims. If the Israelis do something, we are victims. If the Europeans do something, the Jews are victims. And I think one of the problems in the Middle East and in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that we are all victims.
Okay, gentlemen,
and we keep harping on this notion of being victims.
Okay,
and
Professor.
we are never liberated from it. Yes.
Professor, I just want to get to one of our callers.
I think we
one of our
need
viewers
to be
calling the show.
liberated.
I just want to get to one of our callers. This is Mohammed calling from Algeria. Go ahead with your call.
This is Ahmed from Virginia.
Okay.
Yes. What do the guests think about Israel's trapping of the handful of Christians in Gaza from attending Christian rites in the West Bank, but allowing Christians from around the world to visit the holy sites in
Okay, let me
Jerusalem
ask.
and the West Bank?
Thank you. Let me ask Charles to answer that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, the truth is that both Muslims and Christians, when they're surrounded by an Israeli offensive, are not able to worship the way they should be able to worship. So I think both Christians and Muslims suffer that. I do think that there is a great irony in the way in which Israel goes out of its way to allow Christians from the Western world to come during pilgrimage times, to be there, and they go out of their way to make sure that happens. I don't think they do that to the same extent for Palestinian Christians. But I do think in the end of the day, we also can't recognize that there is a culture of intolerance that hurts minorities like the Christian community in the Middle East. And that is true in Iraq, that's true in Egypt, that can be true in the West Bank and Jerusalem. But it is a complex issue. And I really respect Dr. Sabella's work in trying to enlighten on this. But we also can't deny.
My apologies, gentlemen. That's where we're going to
persecution.
have to leave it. That's where we're going to have to leave it. We've run out of time. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
On the next show, the battle for the soul of Pakistan, pitting the pro-Taliban forces who want a more conservative society against the liberals who want more social freedoms. Who will win? See you next time.